All right, guys. I'll make it quick so we can get to lunch. So it was an hour, but they got the 5 and O mixed up, so it's actually supposed to be 1:05. But now because of the lovely panel, we'll be a few minutes late. So a lot of the people have been giving technical talks, and in those technical talks, it's what's about Cosmos, what is happening, what's coming, and all this stuff. And I wanted to change it up. So everyone here, like, who here is actually building a piece of software with the Cosmos stack? Perfect audience for a non-technical talk. So not as many people as you might think raise their hands. So does decentralization matter? And I know what you're thinking. All of you guys have this look on your head. Is this financial advice? What is he going to say? Is he going to give us the hard answer? Well, stick with me and I'll let you know at the end. So who am I? I'm the Cosmos SDK lead. I've been in Cosmos for 5 years, through thick and thin. So it's definitely been a lot of the best years of Cosmos. I don't know if a lot of people would have survived, but it's definitely been a journey. I worked on Tendermint Comet for 2 years, so I haven't experienced throughout the stack. Now I work in the Cosmos SDK. I'm the founder of Binary Builders. Binary Builders is an entity that works closely with the ICF, the Interchain Foundation, to develop the Cosmos SDK and a plethora of other things. My wife works at Anoma in Namada. If you watched my previous talk, then this was actually married to Polkadot, so she just transitioned to Anoma Namada. Also, shout out if you want t-shirts from Anoma Namada, they're in the back. I'm Croatian. I love sports, dogs, and boats, and that's the Interchain pup. And so if you've probably seen him on Twitter, and if you come to Berlin, we'll have merch with his face on it. So who cares? Who cares about decentralization? Do your parents and grandparents care about decentralization? I don't know about you guys, but my grandpa doesn't know how to use a computer. Like, my parents can barely use a computer. I know in Asia, the technology is more embedded in the culture, and so there's a lot more people who know how to use technology. But when you ask your parents, do you care about this? They ask you, what is it? So what is decentralization? Do our non-crypto friends care about decentralization? Well, right now, if I go and ask my non-crypto friends, also, it's highly recommended to have non-crypto friends. Sometimes you live in a bubble if you have too many crypto friends. If I go ask them, do you care what decentralization is? They're like, oh, I use these apps. But it's like, they don't care if it's on a centralized server, if it's from Google, if it's from what. So who actually cares about decentralization? Do crypto meme traders care about decentralization? They just care if it's on an exchange. I was having an interesting conversation with Josh from Kepler earlier this week, and he was talking about how the culture in Korea is around trading crypto. And it's like there's these DEXs, and he was, not DEXs, centralized exchanges. And it's like the updating of prices, and it's all in your face and everything. But it's like they're trading for speculation. So it's like, do they actually care if there's decentralization or not? Or do they just care if they can just make a buck? The last but not least, okay, do regulators care? So regulators, this is actually a really interesting point. And in my opinion, and I'll touch on it later in the slides, I do think decentralization is being redefined before our eyes. It's going from what we knew in the past to a new world. And I think a lot of people are still thinking in the past instead of what's coming up in the future. Finally, last, do 10x crypto engineers care? So I think they do. So I think we all who are working in crypto do care about decentralization. But at the end of the day, when we go and use the tech, when we go and use Osmosis, when we go and use Kepler, Leap, all these other technologies, we're fine to use a centralized third-party RPC provider. So it's like, if we all care about this, but the UX is so bad, what are we actually trying to do here? And are we willing to put in the time to actually make the effort to change it up? So, do we actually know what decentralization means? So I found this meme, and it's actually puts it really well. It's like, if a project's decentralized, like, who actually owns it? Like, who's actually the main thing? And I think in the crypto industry, the only two projects to do this, in my opinion, are the Cosmos Hub and Ethereum. It's like, No one technically owns the Cosmos Hub. The Cosmos Hub was empty, had no leader for years. Ethereum has a leader, but it's done with many different people in the ecosystem, many different researchers. So does decentralization mean lots of validators? Well, lots of validators has been the past. Look at Ethereum. It has 1 million validators. Of those 1 million validators, only a subset actually are coming to consensus. In Cosmos, you have 100 plus validators, and if you want faster block times, you reduce your validators. But Cosmos has a bit of a different approach. We say decentralization isn't with the amount of validators you have, it's actually with the distribution of stake. And so in all these scenarios, if we actually look at the entities behind validators, and we look at the Nakamoto coefficient, it's usually 10 to 15 at most validators who equate to 2/3 plus of a network. So if that is what decentralization is, why do we need millions of validators? Why do we need hundreds of validators if 10 to 15 really mean decentralization? So now we're in the L2 space. We have this notion of proving and verification with optimistic fraud proofs, ZK proofs. And so does decentralization mean in the new world that there's lots of provers? That proving is the form of decentralization. Does posting to data availability to Celestia, to Avail, to Ethereum, does that mean decentralization? Well, sequencers, we have a single server. So the centralized sequencers that we know of today, Optimism, Arbitrum, Base, all these Blast, all these names, they're technically centralized, but they have good user adoption. So why do we actually care about decentralization? And what does it actually mean to us? So before we diving into that answer, let's break down what a chain does and what happens in all three stages. So block inclusion. Block inclusion is the form of creating a block or proposing a block. In this form, we can actually say that we do want this to be semi-decentralized or decentralized because we want censorship resistance. We don't want it's funny because I just saw a tweet earlier today about how you need to do KYC to bridge out of base. And it's like, that goes against the whole ethos of blockchain. Like for them, it's just a money printing machine. Like otherwise it doesn't mean anything. But for them, it's like they can do, they can do OFAC transactions. Like they can block anything that they don't want. They can censor everything. So it's like in inclusion, there's many different ways of how we can do this. We can decentralize the block building protocol, or you can have a decentralized protocol. So it really depends. So execution can be centralized. Like we don't need a lot of computers executing all the same state. Like this is the interesting thing in the rollup space, that where we're going towards, it's like we have one machine executing everything. And then at the next step, proving and verification. Proving and verification is the most important part, and at which point we want the most decentralization. This is where there are teams just now starting to pop up where they're building verification execution marketplaces. And there's a team in Cosmos, there's a few teams around. And this really matters the most because essentially what we're saying is if you execute on a single server, you are centralized by definition. But if you have decentralized proving and verification, then all of a sudden, if there's a decentralized network, proving and verifying that the state transition that happened on the rollup or the chain, then does that mean you're decentralized? This is the redefinition that we're starting to see in the broader blockchain space. What decentralization isn't that everything needs to be decentralized. It's only that a few steps may need to be decentralized, and a few steps can be centralized, therefore saving on a lot of computation. So where were we in the past, the present, and the future? So in the past, we had a lot of validators. Like I just touched on, we had Ethereum. We have Ethereum with 1 million blocks. We have Cosmos with hundreds of validators on every chain. We have Polkadot, hundreds of validators. So it's just validators. Proof of work. I think Sunny would get upset with me if I didn't say that proof of work is really the only form of decentralization. And I think a lot of people do think that. But at the end of the day, proof of work is not efficient. We've all moved to this world of proof of stake, but we've sacrificed something that really proof of work really held at its core. In the present, we're just trusting third parties. And we have validators, trusting third parties like Optimism, we're trusting basically if you play on Base and if you trade on Base, you essentially are trusting Coinbase to do what they are saying they will do. If you trade on Optimism, Arbitrum, you're saying, I trust that this company, that this legal structure in the Web 2 world that we're trying to escape, that this whole space was created to escape from, we're trusting that legal structure in order to secure us. So that's where we are in the present. In the future, I touched on that we're gonna have a decentralized proving networks and light clients. Light clients have always been the vision of blockchain, but we've since 2017, 2018, 2019, a lot of the teams that were working on light clients gave up because they saw that no one actually cared about decentralization, that they were all just willing to just work on centralized servers or interact with centralized RPC providers. But I do think that it's less so about if people want it, but more so if we can build it for them and help secure the people that want to use this technology. So how do we get decentralization? Instead of saying, I want more validators, I want equal stake across the whole validator set, we should have light clients and wallets. We should have trustless transaction submission and trustless queries. Imagine a world where you sign into Kepler and you know that you don't have to sign in with an RPC provider. You can just submit a transaction. It doesn't go to Kepler. It doesn't go to some third party. It just goes straight to the blockchain. There's no chance of something in the middle taking advantage of your transparent transaction. Prover networks are starting to emerge. And as we get there, we're going to start seeing more and more different forms of decentralization instead of the only one form or two forms that we know of today, which is a lot of validators and proof of work. So I also touched on trustless transaction submission and trustless queries. So why? Why do we actually care about decentralization if our users don't? Well, in my opinion, it's not about what the users know, because like our parents don't know. Like some people struggle with passwords and some people are starting to use passkeys, but it's like, that's such a new technology. But all the technology, all the security that people are working on, not only in blockchain and beyond, is not because people want it or need to know how to use it. It's because it protects the end user from new scams and new ways of stealing information. And so I think in the blockchain space, decentralization falls into that category. We can't sacrifice the centralized and efficiency of centralized environments because it's just easier. It makes it work better because it's easy. We need to do the hard things today in order to make the world a better place tomorrow. So we want to enable safe interaction between parties. Like now, if you're doing a contract between parties, you're trusting a third-party legal structure, and we can build this stuff on chain. And last, we want to build a trustless web. Right now, everything is trusted. You need to trust that the server behind the scene is actually saying what it's doing. I mean, everyone here who has a Mac has probably heard of the M1, M2 chip sidecar injection, that it's like now you can steal like private keys from the enclave because of how it loads it into memory. Well, that whole thing is really, no, I just lost my train of thought. But that whole thing, it's like we think about that, we learn about that, and then we blindly trust that Apple's going to come out and fix it and everything. But in the end, they probably won't. It's probably going to be you need to buy a new computer. But like earlier in the slides, I had the who cares, and I wanted to do like a 2000s word art. And because of the M1, M2, I went to this website, I found it, and it was like, download the word art. But it's like, now I don't know what I download if it's going to start stealing secret keys. And so I didn't download it and just use a normal font. And it's like, that is the world we live in today. How can I trust that what I will download won't be something that will steal information? So, back to the first question. Does decentralization matter? What does decentralization mean to you? I don't expect people to go home and say, oh, I'm going to stop using these apps because I'm going to because I care about decentralization. I don't think we're going to go home and be like, oh, I'm going to spin up an Osmosis node. I'm going to spin up a Cosmos Hub node. I'm going to spin up an Ethereum node, a Solana node, so I can interact through my own RPCs. I mean, that would be amazing today, but those things are hard to do. And the average user, the average retail user cannot do that. Even the advanced retail user cannot do that. That's a very hard task. So it's like, I'm not saying that we should stop doing it, but just like evaluate, what does it actually mean to you? And then also, are you willing to put in the effort and the work and the time to make decentralization seamlessly integrate into our technologies today so we can use the technology tomorrow? We can use it and users can use it without having to worry about our information being stolen. So if I can leave this talk with one thing being left in everyone's mind is, let's avoid another ecosystem meltdown due to centralized parties. So in my opinion, the whole FTX, the whole Celsius, that whole situation happened because we forgot about decentralization, because it was just easier to take the easy road out and go to centralized parties. This situation created a whole meltdown of our ecosystem, which I bet we all felt. Like, it wasn't like, oh, it was a meltdown, tomorrow's going to be better, that's it. We all felt the downturn. So it's like, how can we prevent that? And we can actually prevent that through making decentralization seamlessly integrate, but also the on-chain interaction be as seamless as a centralized exchange. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.